Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage moderator of our next panel, Janice Carter-Ray.
Good morning. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us on the panel discussion, Utilizing Technology and Maximizing Efficiency. On behalf of the SBOA, I thank each of our panelists for joining today and sharing their knowledge and expertise in the industry. Feel free to ask questions for the panelists, and we'll get your questions if possible. If we can't get to your questions, we'll circle back with you after the conference and make sure that they get answered. So let's get started. I'd like to introduce the panelists first. Robert Cheedy has over 35 years of experience developing innovative solutions to solve real business problems. After spending 20 years working enterprise software companies and a few startups, Robert launched OpenTech out of his garage. He is focused on strategic planning, corporate development, and evangelizing the company's vision to everyone that will listen. He loves working with self-storage owners, and when he's not doing that, you can find him hiking with his wife, Shelley. Nice to have you, Robert. Matt Kuby is the Vice President of Sales for Cygnus Systems. He helps small and medium-sized businesses leverage their technology to drive their business forward. Scott is a business professional with over 25 years of sales and sales management experience. Being a business professional to Scott means understanding business fundamentals, developing strong relationships with cross-functional team members, and driving results. Hi, Scott.
Hi, Janice.
Chuck Gordon is next. Chuck is the CEO of Storable. He's focused on building the leading full integrated technology company in self-storage. Originally, Chuck started Sparefoot in 2008 with co-founder Mario Fagega, and has since overseen its expansion to become the leading marketplace in self-storage. In 2018, Chuck led the company through acquisitions of SiteLink and formed Storable, the new brand to combine the entities. Since then, Storable has acquired StoreEdge, StoreSmart, SBOA Merchant Services, Select Merchant Solutions, and Easy Storage Solutions to deliver a comprehensive all-in-one tech solution to the self-storage operators. Glad to have you, Chuck.
Thank you.
Brian Stewart is next on our panel. He leads the most experienced and trusted access control and security sales team in self-storage industry. As PTI's Director of Sales, he brings over 15 years of progressive sales experience to help manage and guide the PTI team. Brian works diligently to provide self-storage operations to all sizes with guidance on the right products and solutions to help them achieve their business goals and strategic vision. What I'd like to start with today is each of the panelists have great technical solutions that allow properties to run more efficiently and can help protect employees and tenants from COVID. Why don't you share a little bit about what you have to offer with our team? Let's start with the panelists. Let's start with Robert. You want to go first?
Sure. OpenTech Alliance has been providing automation solutions for the self-storage industry since our inception in 2003. So while this is kind of major changes for some self-storage operators, we've been promoting automation for many years and delivering tools for that, starting with our self-service kiosks. And then we have actually a call center while they're at the kiosk, or I can take calls for the managers. We have a cloud-based access control solution system, an Internet of Everything platform that allows operators to manage the properties remotely. And we also run the world's largest online auction site, Storage Treasures, so you don't have to bring people to your facility to go through the auction process. Those are the four major pieces that we offer. We have lots of other utilities for texting, for reminders, and online rentals, and lots of other automation utilities as well.
Great, thank you, Robert. Chuck, can you share with us your offerings as well?
Sure thing. So Storable offers a one-stop shop solution for everything a storage operator needs to run their business effectively with technology. And so the core of that is really our software. And so we have the SiteLink, StoreEdge, and Easy Storage Solutions software products. And then with those, we also have the ability to bundle in payments, tenant insurance, websites, and Sparefoot, which is the aggregator site where you can get more new rentals in addition to your own website.
Great, thank you. Ryan?
Absolutely, yeah. PTI has been obviously focused and the leader in the access control, specifically for the self-storage industry for the last 40 years. Currently deployed in the majority of the facilities out there. Working hard to diligently provide the best solutions to the industry, from all the hardware on site to continually innovating and bringing new technologies to market to keep up with the demand and changes in COVID and everything else, from web-based to mobile devices to camera technologies and everything, to help operators continue to operate as efficiently as possible, control who's on their property, their customer, their tenant experience, and all around being the best partner for them.
Great, thank you, Ryan. And last but not least, Scott?
Yeah, Cigna Systems has been helping small businesses leverage their technology to move their business forward for 30 years. The big areas that we help folks with is cloud-based solutions. That is for both voice type of solutions as well as IT. We help plan, implement, and support those solutions.
Oops. Can't hear you. Just me, I can't hear.
I can't hear you there.
Chuck, you want to go first? What product changes have you made or added since the COVID-19?
Yeah, sure. So Storable it has a lot of different teams working on a lot of different products, but specifically related to COVID, we decided to kind of accelerate the development of a couple key features to help our customers. And on the Sparefoot side, a couple ones to note are the contactless move-in badge. So if you go on Sparefoot, you'll notice that, and you do a search, you'll see that a lot of people have a contactless move-in badge on their listing. And basically that means that the facility enables their customers to move in without having to go into the office. And we've seen pretty rapid adoption of that amongst our customers who offer that capability, and the share of consumers who are booking at facilities that offer it is actually significantly higher than those who don't. It's kind of interesting. We also started doing online move-ins from Sparefoot for customers who use SiteLink or StoreEdge, and that has seemingly had a pretty significant impact to move-in rate, meaning the number of reservations that actually rent. And then on the software side, we made some major improvements to the online rental e-sign process for both SiteLink and StoreEdge, enabling our storage operator customers to text and email the link to complete an online move-in, no matter where the reservation came from, which definitely has seen use as well since we rolled it out. But generally speaking, our roadmap kind of already had a lot of COVID kind of relevant features in it, if you will. We're always working on making everything more possible online and enhancing the ability to automate, which just all kind of fits really well into what operators need to navigate this environment.
Great, thank you, Chuck. How about Ryan?
Absolutely. So, and I think kind of in line with Chuck there, a lot of our solutions and our kind of technology roadmap was in place pre-COVID versus reactive to COVID, as kind of the demands of the industry continue to evolve, being, remote management and hands-free access. So a lot of web-based access control so that operators can manage, one facility to multiple facilities from wherever they are. You don't necessarily need to be on site to see anything, as well as hands-free for tenants, right? Especially in the current days of COVID, nobody wants really to touch anything. So those two, kind of remote management and hands-free access control, are the two major values from access control standpoint. So those were in place before COVID. The current times right now just make that much more of a priority. So the team and our engineers are focused 100% on making sure that those solutions are continue to innovate, work seamlessly for our customers, and are robust as possible.
Great, thank you. And Robert, Scott?
Yeah, again, much like Chuck, we've got lots of different product lines and teams, so I won't bore you on all the pieces that we're working on. But I think one of the key ones that we'll hear come up today is security. As we've been helping self-storage operators rent units online for over 10 years, and through a kiosk, which means there wasn't always a manager there. And so we have found that without someone at the property, you want to make sure that you also have solid security through your access control system, really understand who's going in and out of the property, who's left on the property at night, those kind of things. And so that's all available through our product line, as well as tying our camera surveillance. We offer a product called Smart Eye, which we have a team that's a virtual security team that actually monitors and surveils your cameras at night, looking for incidents that may happen. And we're integrating that to the access control system so that they'll be able to come in the morning or not come in, I guess, wake up at home and take a look at what's happened at their property the day before, understanding who's been in it, and have some visual videos to watch, digital visuals to watch in case there's been an incident. So we're going to try to tie some of that stuff closer together, understanding that the person managing the property may not be and probably won't be at the property as they start the day.
Great, thank you. Scott?
Yeah, we really saw two main areas, Janice, of focus. It was more of an acceleration in things that have been around for some time. The first one is just being able to virtually interact with staff as well as prospects and customers. That's both on the telephone side, being able to answer phones appropriately and in a timely fashion, as well as being able to access back-end information and systems. So that ability is achieved in several different ways, but just working with folks on how they can most expeditiously do that while still serving the needs of their clients and prospects. And the other big area was, how do we do so securely? So a lot of folks had already invested in some systems to protect people and their assets and information when they're in the office. But as they move perhaps to home-based devices, that attack landscape increased. And so there was quite a few concerns from business owners in ensuring that their information was secure.
So my next question is, in your opinion, what are some of the operational changes operators have made as a result of COVID-19 that have become best practices for the future? Let's start with Robert.
Well, I think probably the low-hanging fruit is auctions. People have shifted from holding auctions pretty quietly with a couple of people at the property to storage wars. Kind of exploded the whole process and brought 20, 30 people on top of the self-storage manager to deal with. And then we moved to online auctions several years ago. And the self-storage industry has always been a little slow to adopt all new technology. We've seen, I think our site has about 8,000 to 9,000 facilities doing auctions, and that's a pretty small number compared to the 40,000, 50,000 that we claim are out there. And everybody has delinquent tenants, so it's kind of like access control. Everybody really needs it. So with that small percentage using it today, we're starting to see and have been seeing a huge amount of people saying that the process for running an auction, best practices will be online. It's no longer going to bring an auctioneer, and we feel bad about what's happening to auctioneers. It wasn't us, but in general, it's not going to bring a bunch of people to the property to bid on them like the storage wars models. And I think that's kind of a best practice. We've been pushing it, of course, because we're selling it, but in general, I think it's a best practice that's going to stick around and not change. It'll we're going to see a lot of expansion. I would guess you're going to see 75, 80% of facilities do it that way in the coming couple of years, and it'll stick.
Great, thank you. Chuck?
Yeah, so I think the biggest thing that we've seen is related to online rentals. And so there were a lot of operators who had e-sign and online rental capabilities in place on their website prior to COVID. And the ones who did have that, I think we're typically seeing somewhere between 10 and maybe up some rare cases 20% of their customers actually using it. But I think what they've seen is that that percentage has changed in some cases to north of 50, 60, 70% usage by their customers. So in terms of big changes and massive adoption, those who already had online rentals have seen a huge shift in their customers actually using it now. And then for operators who didn't have e-sign or online rentals enabled, many have moved quickly to turn that on and are starting to see similar usage amongst their customers. And the other thing we're seeing is that there's a lot of people out there who have been using a kind of older or antiquated software system that isn't necessarily web-based, and they have been scrambling to get something in place that actually enables them to work in a contactless world. So we've been seeing pretty high volume of people coming in and buying our software products to enable that functionality for them.
Great, thank you. Scott?
Probably the biggest area that we've seen is really the advancement in terms of just using tools like this, Janice, whereby I think we've gone through kind of a 10-year cultural transformation in a matter of 2 or 3 months, where these tools have been around for 5, 10 years. And some of us have used it sporadically, whereas now most of us are kind of living on these tools, interacting with the staff, interacting with clients, interacting with prospects. And so it'll be interesting to see the continuation of that. I did see a statistic where 51% of the Fortune 500 CEOs said that their travel budgets will never be the same that they were pre-COVID. So subsequently, I think that this is going to be around to stay. I think it's a means to allow business owners to reduce costs and leverage the technology to help them drive higher profitability and really better, more timely engagement.
Great, thank you, Scott. Brian?
Absolutely, no, and I agree with the other guys and the points that they've brought. As we all know, self-storage has been a little bit slow to adopt some of the technologies out there that a lot of other industries and verticals have been using for years to better kind of optimize the efficiencies of their operations. So current times are just making that just a priority. Demand is going through the roof for a lot of the operators out there that were hesitant to add additional technology and in some essences cost to their bottom line, but seeing it as a necessity to continue to operate and keep their businesses alive, right? So in this world, and to Scott's point, I don't see it slowing down. So just the demand for being able to increase your software to web-based, to be able to have control everywhere. The demand is definitely increased. So I don't see that changing.
Those are operational changes for property owners, and what do you think the changes are as a best practice for the future are with consumers out there? Let's start with you, Ryan.
Best practices from, I'm assuming you refer from the tenant standpoint?
Yeah, from a tenant standpoint relative to the COVID. And going forward, what do you think the tenants are going to do different?
And I think it's been a trend as far as all of us as consumers in every aspect of our life. Doesn't apply just specifically to self-storage, but it's going to roll over to the industry as well, where as a consumer, we want everything instantly. We don't want to necessarily have to talk to anybody to get it. And we want everything at our fingertips. So to be able to do everything online, from renting it, gaining access, paying your bills, moving in, moving out, anything that has to do with their time as a tenant at a self-storage operation, just needs to be automated, easy as can be, and without the access of having to talk to somebody.
Great, thank you. Chuck?
Yeah, I think that this question kind of follows my responses to the other one, which is clearly, and we've seen the data in our usage on Sparefoot, people want to rent online, and way more people want to rent online today than they did pre-COVID. And the situation that I kind of liken it to is the fact that my 90-something-year-old grandparents are using DoorDash and Uber Eats now, which never would have happened in a million years if it wasn't for COVID. But they're going to keep doing that afterwards, and so are self-storage tenants. They're going to continue to want to rent online, transact online, There's opportunities in here too, because it saves operators a ton of hassle and potentially labor hours in being able to actually conduct business remotely like this. And you also have the opportunity to get way more people to pay by credit card and enroll an auto bill, which is better for everyone. So there's a lot of upside here in these consumer trends, in my opinion.
Great, thank you. And Robert, your thought?
Yeah, from a consumer perspective, I have my own opinion, so take it for what it's worth, 2 cents. But what we've seen is that the consumers have really gotten used to this form of communication via digital Zoom and Teams and all the other brands that are out there for working together. And we think that's actually going to be a pretty good substitute for having someone at the property on a regular basis. Our self-service kiosks have provided this kind of two-way video, which was wasn't as good, as clear as this, the technology wasn't as good. So we released, with our new version, releasing a whole new platform for video. And what we believe is going to happen is, as people come to the property, while there may not be a manager there, they're still going to have an expectation of a level of service to speak to someone about problems they have, questions they have. While I know that we believe everybody wants to rent without speaking to someone, I think that's the case. Well, as soon as they have an issue, they want someone there immediately to solve it. It's like having somebody at Home Depot to tell you which aisle of the stuff is you're looking for. You want them right there. You want to go looking all over. And so I think the two-way video on a self-service platform at a property is going to be a really good tool for, and it's going to satisfy the consumers, because they're used to this process. They're used to going to a computer and finding a live person to ask real questions on. So we think that's one of the changes that will be here to stay. And I believe that while Ryan had mentioned that that people are doing it don't want to talk to someone, I think that we're going to see that there is so much separation in people because of this COVID and such things as that. There might be a demand for people to say, hey, I really want to talk to a live person. I mean, how many times have you called the bank or somewhere and you can't get a live person on the phone? There's even banks that's their whole pitch, is that you get automation, you don't get a live person. So I think you have to have the combination. And I think this kind of two-way video stuff is going to be a good substitute for that. For the consumer, I think they're going to really appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you for your thoughts, Robert. Is that your thought?
So it's interesting. My 24-year-old son and his fiance are living with us, and they're going to be buying a house. So they have a storage unit near where we live. So I understand that it's not a vast customer survey, but I did talk with him quite a bit about that. And to what everybody else said, it was really more of an online experience. Granted, being 24, he's going to be kind of prone more towards that than perhaps older folks. But I do see that shift kind of changing. And I agree with Robert. I think that people like to use technology, like to not interact with people until they do. And when they do, can you leverage some kind of technology in order to facilitate that, whether that's video, voice, or whatever the case? But I do think that kind of instantaneous ability to speak to someone, now they may not be needed to be on site per se, but at least to be able to interact, address questions, concerns, and those kinds of things will be important and could be a differentiator for people.
Great, thank you. We have a question from our audience. John Price of Storage Pros. His question is, does the panel foresee the industry moving toward operating stores solely with technology and without traditional store employees? And if so, how long might this progression take? Let's start with you, Chuck.
Yeah, I think that is, there's already some operators out there that do this. 10 Federal, Red Dot, others, and they've made it work. But it's a bit of a different model, and it requires kind of changing the way you run your business to make that happen. And you can do it with our technology as well, and of course using Robert and PTI's technology too. So I think it's possible to do it. Do I think that is going to be a sea change? I don't. I think more people will do it, but I think that the big thing is going to be people will have less staffed hours. They won't need to have so many people in the office at the same time, even in an urban environment where typically they needed multiple managers on. All of that is because more people will be transacting online, but you're still going to need someone there to handle whatever comes up. And also people like having a manager on site just for making them feel safe about their stuff being there. So I think you'll sum all that up. I think more people will do it, but I don't think it's going to be like a sea change in the industry.
Great, thank you. Scott, your thoughts?
Yeah, I'd agree. I think it's really more of an opportunity. While it may make sense for some, but it could be an opportunity for places to potentially reduce staff. We did have a client where what they wanted to try and achieve was just to make sure that when people called that they got a live human being, albeit, you don't want to staff to the point where you're going to have excess capacity and waste money in that way. However, what they were able to do is set up a situation whereby if property one, for example, those individuals or person was busy, that it could automatically then move to another facility whereby someone, while not at that site, could kind of address those concerns, take those questions, rather than the person hanging up, or not leave a message and perhaps move on to a competitor.
Thank you. Ryan?
Yeah, I would. I'd echo Chuck and Scott so far. I see it's going to continue to change, and more people will dip their toes in and try to do a lot more automation. Is it going to be a universal change and kind of the new way of operating for everybody? No, I don't believe there is, because there's no one size fits all solution for anybody, right? There's all the different technologies and solutions available in the marketplace that, as Chuck was alluding to, we can connect the dots from all the different solutions necessary to help you achieve that goal. But it's not a one size fit for everybody. There's people in big cities to other people out in rural areas where, that level of service and automation might not make sense for your business. So it's a matter of looking at all the different tools and technologies that are available out there, understanding what each one of them does, and putting together the right solution for you. Not what everybody thinks is the right solution for everybody, but for you personally.
Great, thank you. Robert?
To dissect John's question just a bit, I think one of it was kind of, will you operate, he called it solely with technology, in parentheses, without traditional store employees. So it's hard to answer that, because I actually believe yes and no, where the no is it will not be operated solely with technology. Certainly not, I don't believe, in my career. And I've been trying to do it for most of my career in the self-storage industry, so it's not without trying. But the idea of without a traditional store employee, I think that's a yes. I think we're going to find that we've overstaffed these properties, and we can probably run, and I think Jefferson Shreve at Storage Express has demonstrated this for, I don't know, almost 20 years to us. And I don't know if some people have been listening and watching or not, but he's been renting self-storage properties with no manager at a property for at least 16, 17 years since I've been around with him. And Chuck and I think Ryan was right, is you have to have a different operation for it. So he doesn't use traditional store employees, as John mentioned, but he has employees, and he has employees that come by the property and they track the, they do unit walkthroughs, and they look for things that are not right, and they keep out units. So I think you're always going to have a type of employee. It won't be the traditional store employee. And I think we certainly are moving towards that direction. You're right. Will it be 100%? No, nothing's 100% in our industry. But I think we're going to see a much larger percentage of the hours of operation being done with technology, not a person. And one person may be managing 4 or 5 properties. And the way they're going to do that is being able to be on their phone. And when someone comes up to a self-service kiosk or goes on the property, it'll pop on their phone. They can actually have a communication, two-way video with the person there if they're at a different property. Walk them to the unit, open the gate for them, say, go look at unit 67. Oh, that's too big. Let me go try 55. And have that whole dialogue, like Scott mentioned, that needs to happen when they have questions, all through their mobile phone, a digital platform. The other thing we've seen is that you still need some eyes and ears on the property. We're actually, our office is right next to a self-storage property, and I saw someone come out of the property and dump a sofa on the side of the road, right next to the entrance one day, and they didn't get out to pick it up. And so there's stuff that happens at properties that you have to be aware of and keep your eyes on. That automated kiosks and access control and online rental, all those great things we sell. or I'm sorry, the whole team sells, won't help if you got a couch blocking your entrance and you don't even know it. So I think that we're going to have to have people come by and still maintain the property and observe it with real human eyes to see what's going on, because the cameras are typically pointed kind of at the tenants, not at the building. So to protect your asset, you're still going to need somebody coming by. So it's my yes, no.
Robert,
sorry, John. Yes,
yeah.
No.
Robert, it's kind of a storming time right now. When do you anticipate things normalizing to some extent?
Oh, well, again, this is kind of a funny panel for me. 16 years, this is normal for me. We've been promoting that you can run a property with a lot more automation, you can rent online. And so for us, this change in operation, although I really feel, it's unfortunate that it has come at the cost of so many lives through this virus. But this change has been coming, basically to John's question. We have been moving in this direction. As Chuck mentioned, there are a lot more operators that are choosing to automate a big portion of their property. And I think that that progression is going to move, be accelerated because of this. And so I think that's, it's here and it's going to stay. It's been coming for a long time.
John, I hope that helped answer some of your questions. If you have a follow-up question, feel free to send it in. We have another question from Greg Michael. This is directed to Chuck. Now that you've purchased Easy Storage, how do you see the platform blending in with your current technology?
It's a great question. So the answer is actually pretty simple, which is that it's, for the most part, not going to. Easy is being run as a separate division. The founders, Ken and Jimmy, are staying on and running that part of the business. They've done an amazing job of kind of building a product and a set of services that really focus on serving the unique needs of the small operator who typically has something less than 250 units or less. And that's kind of their bread and butter. And we believe that they're equipped to continue to do really well and continue to grow in that segment. So we're kind of leaving them a bit separate from the rest of Storable.
Great, thank you. Greg Michael, I hope that answers your question. If you have a follow-up question, feel free to ask. And we have another question that came in from Ian Bernstein. Can you talk a little bit about what owners and operators can be doing related to technology to improve the bottom line and save money? Let's start with you, Robert.
I think the low-hanging fruit is certainly payroll expenses, right? So I think that's been, and Ian probably knows better than anybody. I think that's might be number one or number two. I think it's either taxes of things that you can actually adjust. Payroll, maybe it's taxes or insurance, one of those two are in there. But I think payroll is right up to the top of one of the expenses that you actually can adjust to help impact your bottom line. And so that's a cost savings piece of it. That's kind of what we typically try to help operators with. I think Chuck's probably got a much better answer to improve your bottom line by really attacking the revenue side of it. So I'll leave it to him.
Great, thank you. Chuck?
Sure. So I think where improving your bottom line comes in particular right now in the COVID situation, is figuring out where you can do your rent increases. What are the rules? You have to, of course, figure out what are the laws and are you allowed to. But in the properties where you are, having the ability to actually do that, and of course our software tools enable that, is going to be key. I think also understanding where you stand with your pricing relative to others, which you can always use sparefoot.com, and look at your competitors to do. And a variety of other kind of revenue enhancing features that we have in our product really do help with the bottom line, both before COVID and after. And also I'll give Robert some credit too. I think another big thing is going to be reactivating auctions. And so again, you need to do your research to figure out where you can and can't. But I know that a lot of operators in areas where you can are doing it, because you got to free that space up. You got to get a new tenant in there. Those are the basic blocking and tackling things, I think, for kind of increasing your bottom line right now.
Great. Ryan?
Absolutely, and I agree with Robert from his point. I mean, a large cost to all of us is human capital, right, and payroll. So utilizing technology, which all technology is designed to help us operate more efficiently, right? But there's a balance there. So you can utilize it to maybe reduce some of your staffing hours, or as Robert pointed to Storage Express, just better utilize, or I should say differently, utilize employees to run your operation, which could reduce headcount, which reduces some of your costs as well. But again, that's a fine line because you still need people to make sure technologies and everything is still, operating correctly. And to Chuck's point, I mean, it's an opportunity to, look and see where maybe you can justify some rate increases or charge a premium by providing some added conveniences to your tenants, mobile access and automation to, increase door level security so that they're, that they have a little more peace of mind and their belongings are safe and secure from electronic overlocks, so that they can even from home see if their unit is still open or closed and make sure that their stuff is safe. So, and again, to my earlier point, I mean, there's no one size fits all solution. It's just a matter of looking at everything, seeing how different aspects can apply and help you, but utilizing it for what works for you.
Great, thank you. Back to Robert. Robert, you have an example that you'd like to share?
Yeah, Ian's question, I kind of talked in generality. So one of the examples I'll share is that when it comes to figuring out how to limit your staffing or save money by reducing costs, what you have to kind of figure out is when are the best hours to have a live person manager on the property and when are not. And so we have customers that are taking that access control data, and they're able to kind of sit back in their office at home, start to look at the entrance and exits of people on the property to find out when they think they have the most people on the property, when they might need someone there, as well as we offer a little thing called Smart Door, which is a sensor that sets up on the front door and allows you to tell you if somebody came in the front door or even came to the front door and couldn't get in. And so that data is playing a big part of somebody thinking about, okay, I want to reduce my staffing. Okay, I'm ready to do it. When do I do it?
Mm-hmm.
Tuesdays, Wednesdays, what? So instead of just taking a shot in the dark and saying, Tuesday sounds good, they're using all this data from these technology systems to make these business decisions to help, and that's how they're actually using the technology to reduce some of the costs.
Great, thank you, Robert. And Scott?
Yeah, I mean, we've seen some instances where the technology, to what the guys have said before, can help drive cost reductions through staffing and other means. Obviously, the other component to it is I would put forth for people's consideration in terms of impacting the bottom line is, can you leverage some of the different technologies that are out there to differentiate you from the competition? And that really kind of comes down to, I think, mainly in customer service aspects of things. So, to that point, can you staff in some capacity, whether it's at each property, whether it's a centralized facility, or however you're doing that, to understand within each location, being able to have people available and leverage the technology such that when people have questions and want to engage, whether that's at 2 o'clock in the afternoon or 2 in the morning for whatever reason, that may be a differentiator that I'd put forth for your consideration in terms of trying to build systems and leverage the technologies that are out there in order to help you accommodate that. And then once you have that capability, being able to then market and leverage that as a means to differentiate. We've all seen in various service industries, as we've kind of gone on our own, when it's done well, it's terrific. But the technologies in and of themselves, when they're not used within a properly designed and monitored and managed system, can just add complexity and add even more frustration.
Great. Thank you, Scott. We have another question that came in from Cheryl Bath. Can you share information on break-ins with storage facilities without staff? Who would like to answer that question?
I mean, I can share with you what that question's asked pretty regularly to Jefferson Shreve, and his answer is they've seen no material change in that situation. Now, remember that his properties are fairly, I think they're in mostly what he calls county seats, 50,000 people or less. And so, some people would call that rural. There was only 5,000 people in my hometown, so I call that a really big city. But he didn't see that kind of stuff. We've had these self-service systems out there, and I'll bet we've had, over the 16 years, we probably had 10 cases of vandalism, and 3 or 4 of them have been managers stealing money out of the back, breaking off the door to make it look like somebody stole it, and it turned out to be the manager. So while I don't have reports of a lot of that in any difference of a manned or unmanned, I got a feeling that it's going to get worse. Certainly as the economy changes, people are a little more hard up for dollars and look for alternative ways to do things, to fund themselves, as well as it becomes more known that there isn't somebody on the property. I think that people will take more liberties there. So that's why I think this idea of surveillance and using some artificial intelligence, I think that PTI does it as well as we do, and help make sure that we're watching the property, because I think it's going to come, even if it may not have been here.
Anyone else have a comment? Ryan?
I think I pretty much just echo what Robert just said. I mean, it's just utilizing the stuff to monitor things in real time.
Yeah, and one more addition is just that you have to always remember that and I've learned this from a really smart operator, it's not just protecting the tenant, that surveillance, it's for both the tenant and protecting your asset. I mean, you got a multi-million-dollar asset sitting there, and you really want to make sure you're watching out for the protection of that as well. And your manager kind of did both of those when they were there. So I think you have to pay attention to it.
Mm-hmm.
Great, thank you. So let's move on to a new question. What risk or threats should business owners and operators be thinking about related to technology? How can integrated technology help those owners and operators? Let's start with Robert.
And you said what the risks are?
What are the risks and threats business owners and operators should be thinking about related to technology?
Well, we certainly just talked about asset protection and tenant protection as a risk and threat. I think that and probably Scott's probably better speak to this piece, but we're doing so much more digitally, and the laws keep changing related to privacy and PII and PCI and some other whatever you can come up with. Is that I think that we're finding more risk in collecting data to run our business and then not managing that properly. And I think that people are saying that images of a person, when you take a picture of them, is starting to fall into the PPI or PII category. So as we start collecting the data we need to online, do a rental and manage the property and business, there's some risk, I think, inherent in making sure that the vendors we're using or our own internal systems are protected. And again, I'll pass it to Scott or whoever else, but I think that's a big risk.
Scott, you want to go?
Sure. I think that the biggest areas that I see is, and related to what Robert said, is the kind of a protection of information. There's quite a bit going on in terms of GDPR, which is a platform for all of Europe, which doesn't really affect our industry too much. However, I do think that you're going to be seeing more and more regulation as it becomes to, if you're going to store information about people, that you have to provide protections in accordance with that. Obviously, it's very impactful for any business if you had a breach where private information of the people that you do business with, your customers, gets somehow put out to the bad guys, and you've got to notify them, and it's very costly and expensive to do that. I kind of equate it to flood insurance, where if your basement never got flooded, you might be kind of walking around a little bit happily oblivious to it, but once it occurs, then you never walk around without flood insurance ever again. And I think we're morphing more and more towards where people moved from an office place to potentially working remote to back and forth now as businesses have begun to open. And the different devices that people are using that are accessing information that deals with very important information for their customers, which is obviously their name, their address, their phone number, perhaps even credit card information, putting the proper protections in place, as well as backing that information up so that if there was a problem that you can restore quickly and continue to operate and not let that be an impediment to continue to do business.
Okay. Chuck?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. My biggest piece of advice is you should use a software platform and other related products from a company that ensures that all the data laws are being followed. So I'll give a shameless plug for ourselves here. We, with nearly 30,000 facilities using at least one of our products, we have a big focus on security and data security and making sure that we're compliant with all laws and as they are constantly changing. Because you don't want to have to worry about this as an operator. That's our job. But there's a lot of people out there who are using older systems, in some cases desktop systems, where credit card numbers are being stored on your PC in the location. And a lot of people's personal information is being stored in your PC. Well, that is not secure, and that is a huge risk. So I think that's the biggest thing is you got to make sure you're using tools that are compliant with data privacy best practices and laws.
And Ryan?
Absolutely. I think that's a fantastic point, especially from Chuck there on PCI compliance. I mean, compliance is always going to be a big risk. So making sure that you're in compliant is going to save you a ton. But I think, in my opinion, I think one of the biggest risks with technology and implementing all that is utilizing it, right? So let's be honest. I mean, adding additional technologies and solutions to it all comes with a cost, right? It all adds to your bottom line. So I think there's a huge risk of not fully utilizing what you're implementing into your facility, into your operations, educating your tenants and fully making technology a part of your operations and your day-to-day, so you're maximizing the value of it. Because if you're not maximizing it and educating your tenants on the value of the solutions, it's purely just a cost.
Great. We have several questions coming in from the audience. Craig Stern asked the question, how are you all addressing obtaining driver's license or IDs with a touchless rental of units? Let's start with you, Ryan.
Nothing for me. I don't do anything with it.
Oh, you're laughing.
I can speak.
Robert?
Oh.
Yeah, so people have asked, so what we do on a self-service kiosk and on an online rental, because we've had people say, I want to make sure I know who I'm renting to. It used to be, I want to look in the whites of their eyes. And after we kind of got them past that, it's like, well, let's make sure that it's not somebody making up fictitious information. So we use a service, doggone, I wish I had the exact name of the service. I'm happy to share the name of the service to anybody that wants to call and ask. And we've been using it for years. We call the service ID Verify. I think they have a more sophisticated name for it. And basically, we collect information during the rental process, name, address, whatever, and then we pass it off to this service. And they come back with, and you can set up whatever lots of different configurations, but 5 questions, and they're called out of the wallet permissible questions. And so the idea is that they have the answers to these questions cannot be found in your wallet. So if somebody steals your wallet, they can't actually find these answers, right? And so they ask questions, and you probably all have had this happen to you when you forgot a password for a financial or a healthcare system that you set up. They have to figure out who you are, and they don't have the whole secret, who's your maiden name, mother's maiden name, which we know will crack any safe in the world because everybody's got that now. So in this case, they ask you, like mine would say, we see that you have these vehicle loans. Which one of these is your vehicle loan? It'll say, Chevy. It'll say Tesla. It'll say, Lamborghini, and then it'll say Ford F-150. And I'm sure most of you could guess that without having my wallet. But mine's a Ford F-150 that I have a loan for. So they go through and they ask you those questions, and they're really good at it. They've been, they do this stuff for a living. If you answer the questions appropriately, you can set up, what the levels. You have to answer them all correctly, or 5 out of 6, or whatever it is, and then that helps identify that the person that's actually renting the unit is who they say they are. Doesn't mean they're not an axe murderer or they're going to pay their bill or anything else like that. It just says, this guy said his name is, Bill Gates, then he actually is Bill Gates. That's a service we use.
Great. A question for you, Scott, that came in from the group. What are some of the best tools you've utilized to help optimize results?
Well, so one specifically was one really more on the call side of things, where the owner was concerned that as people called in, that it was important to him that the prospects and customers get a live human being. And so what we were able to set up is they had kind of a phone system that was just old at each site. They had several kinds of what are called POTS, plain old telephone lines, copper lines, if you will, at the various facilities. And what we were able to do is reduce those and eliminate the POTS, leverage some new technology called voice over IP, and put in a hosted phone system where what they did is set up a buddy system so that when someone called into property one, for example, and if the folks who were working there were busy showing a unit or dealing with something, it would go to their buddy property like unit two, in which case that phone got answered. And really the prospect was none the wiser in terms of who she was speaking with. They were able to answer the questions. They could use some technology and then set up an appointment for when the people would be there, or to get into the property, that show the unit, and hopefully close more business that way.
Great, thank you, Scott. We have a question for you, Robert, from Michael Spain. You mentioned 24/7 answering of phones. Is there a call center that you provide, a call center that provides answering of the phones in the middle of the night?
I promise I didn't set this one up, but yeah. So Open Tech Alliance our company offers a 24/7 call center service. XPS and others may offer it too. I'm not familiar with them. And so people's next question is, how many calls do you get? I think the biggest joke is we always talk about the calls we get and they ask, Jake, what are you wearing? So we do get some of those calls at night where people call in and maybe they should have not dialed the phone. But in lots of cases, it's someone stuck in the property. Operational calls, not necessarily it's 2 a.m. I want to rent something. But we offer that service. And one of the things we're trying to do is we're taking our technology platform. We want to put in the hands of self-storage operator staff so they can answer those calls. So we're taking our platform as well as the two-way video for a kiosk and everything. And because frankly, running a call center, and I'm sure Chuck and others can attest to, it's not like something you aspire to when you're growing up. There's people want to be a fireman or a policeman, and nobody says they want to run a call center. And with managing that many people and what's going on with COVID, they're all working from home. It's become a little more of a challenge. So we want to give operators the opportunity to have their own staff that they hire and put wherever they want. They can take all the calls in, at least during the day, a lot of times, and as well as service the people that come to the kiosk, those kind of things, and build a little more personal rapport, because it's the same, it's Tom or Bill or Judy that they talk to every time when they get on that kiosk or when they get on their phone. So we're trying to help kind of, I won't say, we're trying to help the operator kind of do it themselves in some cases. So, and we have all the technology platform to do it with. But in the meantime, and for the ones that want us doing it, the larger operators, we have a call center that works 24/7.
Great, thank you, Robert. Michael has another question for Chuck. Is SiteLink storable using an ID verification system as well?
So we don't offer that directly, but you can integrate with various ones like, through Robert, or you can kind of put it into your own process on your website. What we've seen a lot of people doing is something along those lines, or just asking for driver's license number and possibly a photo during their online rental process. And frankly, what most people are doing is they're just making the tenant show them their ID through the glass of the office. That's the totally simple and free way of doing it. I think there will be more innovation on that front in the future, but right now that's kind of what we're seeing.
Great, thank you. So my next question is, if price wasn't an issue, what is an improvement that you would like to see in the industry? Let's start with you, Ryan.
Well, if price wasn't an issue, we'd all charge more for it, and everything that we sell, and everybody would buy it, right? But I think, price being an issue or not, you still got to be smart with whatever you're spending, right? And I think it goes back to the same kind of message that I've been singing all along, is really just evaluating all the different solutions and technologies out there, and how they can affect your bottom line, your operation, your tenant experience, and really help you achieve your goals. So price or not, it's just investing smart into the tools that can actually help you.
Great, thank you. Robert?
I'm a big believer in the platinum rule, which is opposite of the golden rule, and that's do unto others as they wish to be done unto is the platinum rule. And so if you think about that in your business, you have to serve those consumers the way they want to be served. So if you've got extra money, my suggestion is to look at the segmentation of the customers you have, and you can break them up in a couple different categories, right? And then think through the ways they want to be served and make sure you're doing it, because it's more expensive and it's more difficult. But you have and try not to stereotype too much of it. Just because they're young doesn't always mean they have to do it through text. But just because they're old doesn't mean they can't use text. But start thinking of your customer segments that you're serving, if it's businesses or residential or what, and think those things through. Then how do you serve them? And used to be at the counter, and all of a sudden people have woken up to the fact that actually it could be on the website, maybe at a kiosk, over the phone. Invest in those channels, because what we found is that disloyalty is more dangerous and more damaging than loyalty. And disloyalty comes about through, and this comes from studies, not from me, I promise you, by making them change the channel they're working with. So if they call you and want to rent a unit and you tell them you have to go online, it's the one thing Southwest got by with, but that usually causes more changing the channel causes more disloyalty. And so if you say, I'm at the property, but you got to go online to get that special when you're at the hotel, that really upsets people, right? So if you have a few extra bucks and price isn't an issue, consider your channels that you're serving, your segments of your customers, how they want to be served, and invest in those additional channels.
Great. Scott?
I tend to look at it a little like Ryan in that I think you want to kind of consider, it's easy to look at different technology solutions and you can get a cost for implementation. But I also think it's important to, and I would encourage people to kind of prioritize things in terms of what is the business need that you're addressing and associating that with. And then also think a little bit about and gain some information into what's the risk or the cost of not doing anything. So obviously you've worked in a certain capacity for some time, and you could do everything face to face. And if we all saw people on a different continuum from being able to move offsite very quickly to those that were kind of stuck in a little bit of older way of doing things. And so I think you've got to be conscious of what is the cost of not doing anything and what is that impact to the organization.
Great, thank you. We have another question from Baden Hayes. Will there be a way to actually sell supplies like boxes and tape without having contact going forward in the future? Do you see that? Who would like to answer the question?
This is Robert. I think that's already capable. You're already capable of doing that in lots of different online rental spots, and also a bunch of different partnerships that are out there. But maybe Chuck has some firsthand experience and who does it and where they do it. But I have seen those systems in place where you can buy product while you're actually renting the unit.
Yeah, you can actually already do that with our software platforms that enables you to do shopping for product online. And what we're seeing our operators do is basically, if someone does it, they'll kind of bundle it up and put it outside for them, kind of like a curbside pickup, like we've been doing at grocery stores and every other business for the last few months.
Great, thank you. Is there anything specific, we have a couple minutes left, that any of you would like to put a little color on or discuss that we didn't touch on today?
Chuck doesn't have a beard anymore.
And Robert was supposed to dance.
Enough.
I took the beard from Chuck.
All right. Well, that's going to conclude our session then. This concludes our session for today. Thank you, Chuck, Ryan, Scott, and Robert, for your wealth of knowledge and insight to the future COVID-19, the pandemic upon us. I wish everyone the best of luck as you work through these difficult times. Please stay safe and healthy, and thank you for being an SBOA member.
Thank you.
Thank you, panelists. You did a great job.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.